Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Last Life Ever podcast. I'm Jillian Sidoti, and this is
Jeffrey Holst.
Hi, Mr. Holst. Welcome to our podcast.
Well, this isn't even really our podcast, is it? I mean, what this really is we're going to introduce our interview that we just completed. If you didn't see the interview, that's because you're not in the Facebook group and you missed it, right? Which is really sad, but that's still available in the Facebook group. So if you're not a member of the private Facebook group, you can go to Last Life Ever private Facebook group. We'll approve you, we promise. You can join that. You can watch the replay in there. It will also be available on our YouTube page in the next day or two. But what we do after we get done with the interview, and we're kind of giving you an inside look at this, is we talk about the interview we're about to do. In like sort of introduce the artist, the guest. This time it's an artist, David Lebo. And then the second thing we do is we have a little banter back and forth after the interview. That gets stuck at the end of the interview. So if you're in the private Facebook group, you have an opportunity to interact live with the guest. Like if you have any questions, you can ask them live while we're doing it. Obviously, a lot of our guests will respond to questions that are sent via email or whatever after the fact. But if you really want to get your questions answered, the best way to do that is to be in the private Facebook group. So without much further ado, Jillian, are you ready to start our pre-interview process?
Yes, I'm ready to start our pre-interview process. So
awesome.
Here we go.
Go!
Okay, now welcome to the Last Life Ever podcast. I'm Jillian Sidoti, and this gentleman here is
Jeffrey Holst.
Hi, Jeffrey. Welcome, everybody. Today, we had the great opportunity to interview Lebo, David Lebo, who is an artist. And Jeff, his art's really interesting. Why don't you explain what his art is?
So he is the innovator of postmodern cartoon expressionism. He talks a little bit about that in the interview, so I won't get into that too much. But the point is, he's actually the guy who started a whole new school of art. I mean, that's crazy. That's like cubism or something. It's postmodern cartoon expressionism. His art appears all over the world. It's in museums. It's on the sides of buildings. It's right behind me here. The reverse mirror thing is confusing, but right behind me here, it appears in my living room on a daily basis. And I just love how insightful this gentleman is. Jillian, what do you think? Anything else our guests need to know before we bring David onto the show?
Well, the thing about his art is that one thing you're going to notice if you go to his website, leboart.com, is he brings in everyday observations into this cartoon world. It's really quite amazing. And so when I started looking at his art on his website, I decided to do a little more exploring, and I found a quote for him that I thought that really just sums it up and brings a whole new thought to art that's otherwise considered a cartoon. My aim in creating is to explore the purest, most spiritual elements of the arts and sciences, from astronomy to history, from music to physics, and to interpret them through the language of cartoons, giving them a unique and vibrant voice. After all, cartoons are a primordial form of expression that have always combined images in order to tell stories. We have only to think of rock paintings, hieroglyphics, or religious iconography for our proof. In reality, even when we look at Picasso's work after 1905, it all becomes very hard-edged yet organic, the very essence of cartooning. And I thought that was so amazing. So I encourage you guys to go over to leboart.com. Also, please recognize I wore my most colorful shirt I could find today because we're interviewing an artist, and I want to get credit for that, for thinking.
I put the original Lebo painting behind me rather than wearing a colorful shirt.
I don't have a Lebo painting, so
you should get yourself one, Jillian. And with that, let's bring on David Lebo. Go! Okay, wow, that was amazing. I love having David on the show. That was fantastic. What do you think? Did it fulfill every hope, wish, and dream that you had about the show?
My thoughts about him are way deeper now than they were before we started the show, because the reality is that we talked about things that transcended art, quite frankly. Or maybe it didn't transcend art. Maybe I don't get it. Maybe
No,
that's the problem.
I think, yeah. So I think that, I mean, of course, we'll let our guest speak for himself, but I think what his point is that everything is art, and you have to like sort of embrace the totality of existence, and that's why he incorporates like ancient Eastern philosophy into his art and quotes from Emily Dickinson, like he has in the painting behind me. It's just, he just brings in all this really, really insightful and thoughtful stuff. And he's just a brilliant guy. And it's just really amazing to have had the chance to talk to him.
One of the things that I found, obviously that big long-winded question I asked him in the middle of the interview was about, becoming an artist, and I couched it in a way of like that it's hard to do anything in this world these days, and so it's hard for a young kid to conceptualize becoming an artist if they don't see any money in it, and so we kind of we explored that a little bit. And one thing he totally admitted to, which I thought was really awesome of him, was that he had an amazing support system. He had great parents and a great brother, and just great people around him who completely encouraged and supported him. And then he also had great mentors. And so one thing I got out of that was, I have one child who's very much into art, and that I just need to be incredibly supportive of those desires to be an artist on his part, but also not just that, but also give him the skinny on the fact that he's got to work really hard. He's got to work really hard at, and he's got to totally, the word I think he used was surrender himself to art, if that's something he wants to do. We all have to surrender ourselves to whatever it is we want to do.
Yeah, no, I thought that was really, really insightful. And you might even want to share that exact part with your son, because if he wants to be an artist, he's going to have a lot of work ahead of him, right? Because it's not for the faint of heart, I think. I mean, there are lots of people that sort of dabble in art, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. Pursuing your hobbies is something we talk about a lot on Last Life Ever, is that if there's something you enjoy, it doesn't have to be your career. You can just enjoy it, right? And that's super important. But if you want to do it as a career, like our guest today did, you have to fully embrace it, and you got to work really hard. In fact, I think he said at one point, he said, you have to work way harder to do this as a business than you do to just go work for someone else.
Right.
And I think that was really, really interesting as well. And he also said that even if you didn't have that support system in place, you still can do this. You just have to look for mentors and he said he believed everyone had guardian angels. And
that was pretty cool.
Yeah. And that he thought that everyone has someone looking out for them. And I thought that was fascinating.
I think we have to also explore that a little more the next time we interview him, because he actually mentioned guardian angels several times, and neither of us asked him about that, which I feel like I do every time we do an interview. Like, why didn't I ask that guy that?
Yeah, next time we just need to interview him for like 2 hours instead of 30 minutes, because I could listen to him talk forever, and we're gonna have to make him come and do a presentation for us or something. I don't know what we're gonna do, but he's just a fascinating person. He's so insightful. And if you are watching this now as a Facebook Live and you didn't see the interview, you should jump over to our group and watch it. Anyway, so Jillian, what else is going on in your life? Now we can move on a little bit from the episode we just finished. What else is going on in your life today?
It's hot as all get out in Southern California right now. And if you're watching this on video format, then you can see that I'm not in my usual setting. I actually moved out of my office and into my house because the AC in my office is really abysmal and doesn't really do much for me. So here I am sitting in my house in the nice air conditioning. Very grateful for air conditioning right now. So, and we also started our homeschooling adventure last week, and we're well into that now. So I am teacher Jillian now. It's super
Professor Sidoti. That's what we're calling
Professor
you.
Sidoti, yeah.
Professor Sidoti.
And
So
Mr. Sidoti is
yeah.
Derek, because we're both in it to win it.
That's right. Right. So Professor Sidoti, let me ask you a question. How is the teaching part impacting your ability to get other stuff done? Like, is it making it more difficult to do this other stuff that you do when you're not teaching your children? Or are you able to work through that?
I don't know. I guess we're only in week 2 right now. And the kids and I had to spend a lot of time this weekend on working on some of their stuff, just catching them up, making sure they were in the right place, doing the right things. One of the lessons I definitely had to learn was not trust that they got something done. Not that they didn't get it done, but that they didn't get it done correctly. So there is a lot of that that we have to work on. And then also, one of them is in kindergarten, so he needs a lot more direction. He needs actual direction and guidance. And so fortunately, Derek's here too. So one of the things I've had to, I guess if you want to call it a sacrifice, I don't really view it as that. But one of the things we've had to sacrifice is I'm just not taking as many clients. I'm not working as much. It's just the way it is. And I'm okay with that. As long as all my employees are getting paid, and as long as I'm making a little something, it's okay. I'm okay with not, killing it every month.
How very last life ever of you. I'd love to hear that, actually, because one of the things that I think about a lot is that people, especially high performing people like yourself, have a tendency to overwork and focus too much on the number. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you really want to make a bunch of money, I don't have an issue with that. I don't have any problem with it. But sometimes that gets in the way of life. And if you let it get in the way of life, then you're not making, your priorities are wrong.
Jeff, and you and I know, because we've talked about this offline before, but I have in the past made the wrong choices and the wrong priorities.
But you're not now. In the past doesn't matter. What matters is right now.
Yeah. So right now, and it's still an effort. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, so for anybody who's hearing, like, thinking like, oh, Jillian had this epiphany and now everything's great. It's not. I am still learning and still trying and still getting over, the anxieties of, like, if I don't take care of this or if I don't take this client, or if I don't do this thing, then, all these other things are going to happen. And the reality is that is a constant thing I have to reteach myself almost daily, that I don't have to do all the work. I don't need all the clients. Not all clients are created equal. So, I need enough to, like I said, take care of my employees and take care of my family. But my number one priority right now is the education of my children. And I'm building Last Life Ever. That's another priority. And I'm building another business with my friend, Charlie Dobbins, who's also a lawyer, where, again, I say it during this interview with Lebo, and I'll say it here again. My whole thing right now, my purpose through both Last Life Ever and Multifamily War Room is to teach people how to build generational wealth. To me, with what has happened with COVID-19, with what is happening in the world, and how I look at Harvard is charging their students the same tuition as if they were at Harvard, and to me, that's unfortunate. For these students who worked hard just to get into Harvard, and now they can't even go to Harvard and they're being charged that same amount. How about we take the sting of all that hard work and the cost that it might be costing by building generational wealth for the next generation. So that's what I'm looking. That's my purpose in life right now, if you will.
That's your why, yeah?
That's my why.
That's your why. I love it. So you have to have a why. So, the generational wealth thing is great. Not having children, it doesn't resonate with me to the same level I think it does with you.
Of course.
For me, my why is I want to help people not have to do things they don't want to do.
Right.
Like, that's like, and really that's the same thing. Ultimately, you're saying, I want to help people to create generational wealth so that their children don't have to do things they don't want to do. And that's totally important to me.
Right.
But I want not to have to do things I don't want to do. And fortunately, there aren't a lot of things I have to do I don't want to do. I mean, we all have some of that, right? But I'm not stuck in a career that makes me, sad every day. I get up in the morning and I have to go to work and I am miserable. I've been there, done that. I don't want to do that again. And I don't think other people should do it either. That's why I like interviewing people like Lebo, who does what he wants. I mean, he talked about that very thing. I mean, he's like perfect. Like he didn't want someone to tell him what he did. He had to work really hard, but he didn't want to be told what to do.
Right.
And that's amazing. And for me, I think that's sort of my why. That's why Last Life Ever exists in my mind, and why I care about it, and why we're working together to build this, is because we both are trying to get to the same point from a little bit different angle, but the same exact point. So it's almost time to wrap up the show here, Jillian. But we like to have jokes. So do you have a joke for us today?
Well, yes, and I think it is so good because at one point in time, Lebo said he used to go to not sketching parties, but he used to hang out with his friends and sketch. I can't remember how.
Oh, he had some kind of crazy thing. He called it like kung fu sketching or something.
Yeah, but he
something crazy.
It in this weird way that it made it sound like he was in like a dark alley sketching.
Yeah, it's like when he was a teenager and he wanted to be really rebellious, he went out and drew stuff.
Yes. So here's my joke. Why did the police officer arrest the artist as a murder suspect?
Because he was really sketchy.
He was a sketchy dude. Yes, very good.
Sketchy dude. All right. So I have a joke also. Now, you remember one of my favorite jokes I ever told was, what is blue and smells like red paint? Do you remember that joke?
Yes. And
yes.
I still
what is blue and smells like red paint? For people who don't know, it's blue paint. Right, because paint smells the same.
I still loved it.
Yeah, I love it, and it's sort of an art-related one. But I wanted something a little different because I've already used that one. So, all right. So, what happened when the ship carrying red paint ran into a ship carrying blue paint? All of their crew were marooned.
Okay, and with that, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Last Life Ever podcast. And Jeffrey's going to remind you to
live the very best version of your last life ever.